Hello, hello. So, when getting into Genshin, it can be very overwhelming since there's a lot you have to take in at first. So, I wanted to make a simple like do's and don'ts guide for beginners since I feel like it can be helpful to just have like a quick like rundown of like a couple of tips for like what you should do and what you should avoid doing. I'm going to start with the don'ts and then I'll move to the do's since the do's are more positive and it's better to end on positivity, I feel. So the first main don't that is kind of really important as a beginner is you don't really want to be spending your fragile resin that you get, since a lot of the things you're going to be spending it on, like when you're low AR, if you just save it and wait till you're higher AR, you can get more out of the fragile resin. So if you're doing a talent domain at AR 20, you're going to be getting a different amount of like talent books than you are at AR 45 when you get the max amount of talent books. So that 20 resin could be giving you a lot more if you just wait and hold on to it. It may be boring to have to hold on to the fragile resin for such a long time, but if you're free to play and want to get the most out of everything, then I feel as though it is best to just hold on to the fragile resin. Continuing off of being free to play, if you are a free-to-play player, you don't really want to be summoning on the standard or weapon banner with your primo gems, unless you really want to. Again, all of these tips are like you don't have to fully listen to. You can play the game however you want, but you don't really want to be pulling on the standard or weapon banner, since the weapon banner, the pity for it, unless like you really need a weapon and like you feel like you can be lucky enough to get the weapon you need, you don't really want to be pulling on the weapon banner, since it's just better to get a new character that you can add to your roster. And for the standard banner, you don't really want to be pulling on it, since you're going to get plenty of standard wishes anyways, so you don't really want to get multiple of the same character. You want to use the new primo gems to get like unlock new characters and get more enjoyment out of the game, I feel, instead of trying to get either constellations or a character that you're going to get eventually from the standard pool. Another thing you don't really want to do is you don't really want to be grinding for artifacts before AR 40 or 50-ish, since you're gonna have to replace everything anyways, because once you reach level 40, or I think it's about 45, the domains are gonna unlock 5-star artifacts, and you're gonna want to have to grind for 5-star artifacts anyways, so it's gonna be best if you just wait it out and wait until you get AR 45 to fully start like spending resin and grinding for artifacts. But also, you don't want to completely neglect artifacts. The game's going to be very difficult if you don't level up artifacts. It's completely fine to level up artifacts. I just been not putting a lot of resin into getting artifacts early on. Also, another thing you don't really want to do is, as you play Genshin, you're going to get a lot of characters, but learning to have like restraints when leveling up and using characters is very important. Since in Genshin you may have unlimited materials, since resin is technically infinite, but at a current moment you're gonna have a finite amount of materials and you don't want to be like spreading them out equally amongst every character. You want to mostly focus on characters you use as like your main team and characters you plan for a secondary team, assuming you're planning for Spiral Abyss. Also, if you plan to level up every character, you're going to have to grind a lot of late lines and use a lot of resin to just level up characters instead of maxing out and putting all your resources into making one team very strong. With Genshin, you kind of only want to focus on 2 teams, since that's kind of all you need to do all the free content in Genshin, and honestly, 2 teams is really all you need, so you don't really have to level up all 20 characters you may have. Also, another tip, since you want to mostly use primo gems for wishing for characters and pulling for characters, so even though you can use primo gems to get back resin, you really don't want to do that. Even though you may get bored and want to just impulse use primo gems to get back resin, it's a waste of primo gems, and it's much better to just wait it out. And even though you may want to keep playing Genshin and grinding, you can either explore the world and just find things to do, or just take a break and come back on later when you have resin to use. Okay, that's all for the don'ts for now, but Now we're gonna move to the do's. So these are just some like kind of pitfalls I've noticed that new players fall into when like beginning Genshin, or that I've fallen to myself at least. One important thing as a Genshin player is you want to max out talents and weapons. Talents and weapons, they're always going to stay leveled up, and they're always going to be like level 90 if you get them level 90. Even if you drop like a character with weapons, if you have a level 90 weapon, you can just move it to the next character that you want to use. So let's say you have a Diona and you're using Sacrificial Bow on her. If you get that weapon to level 90, at any point in time, if you wanted to drop her, you could put that level 90 bow on like Yelan or a Colette. And with talents are just like, it's good to level them up simply because like talents are always going to be the same. With artifacts, they're luck based, and with talents, it's just flat. So it's just a good way to boost your numbers, and talents are just very, very important to level up. You shouldn't neglect leveling them up. One also tip I have that's a good do is when I first started playing Genshin, I killed every enemy I saw. It was fun, and if you have fun with it, I recommend doing it too. So killing every enemy you kind of just run into is a good way to just save grind from later. Like you may also, if you still love the game, you can continue grinding at AR like 50 and just killing every enemy you see. But I recommend as a newer player just taking time to like killing every enemy you see, since you're gonna need to use those resources eventually, and it's good to begin the grind at least sooner than later when you're not exhausted of grinding. You also get a little bit of more, which is always helpful. But you're gonna need a lot of like enemy drops to ascend weapons and talents, since every character almost has a different weapon, or not weapon. Every character has a different enemy drop that they use to ascend. Also, one big do is when I first got into Genshin, I went in completely blind, where I didn't know what artifacts were. I didn't know what weapons were good, what weapons were bad, and I just went in completely blind. I recommend doing a little bit of research into like what artifacts are, and just like a very entry guide on what artifacts to like build and like what to build on characters, because it is very helpful to know what you want to build on each character. Since if you go in completely blind, you could be putting you could have amazing artifacts, but you just don't know they're good because you just don't know that they could be good. And you could also be playing characters completely wrong. So I just recommend doing some research before either building or pulling for characters, since it can just be very helpful if you know like what type of role a character fills in on a team. And that kind of goes into my next point. Knowing how much this goes into research, but investing into characters like in proper amounts is very important in Genshin. What I mean by this is your main DPS should get the biggest priority. They should have the best artifacts they can, the best talents they can. They should be level 90 if possible. Same thing with weapon. And if you're a new player, you can't do all that, but in general, you want to focus on your main DPS, whoever that is, and get them the best they can be. For everyone else, such as the sub DPS and healer, they are kind of like second priority, or the second priority should be the sub DPS, I would say, since they're also going to be doing damage. But it can also be like a pyro applier, like any element applier. Just in general, any applier or a sub DPS should be like second important. And usually for main DPSs, you want to get them to level 90 with as high talents as you want them to be. I usually get mine to like 888 or at 999. If you really, really like them, I would say crown them. But that's just for a good example. And for like sub DPSs, unless they are auto attacking, I would keep their base attack at 1 and then just like 8-8, where that's like 70-80 for the sub DPS. And then for the support and healer, which they're kind of the same thing but also not. A support mostly like, for example, Sucrose is a support, but she's not a healer. But some characters are supports and healers. For the supports and healers, you can keep them at 70-70 usually. If they scale with HP, you may want to get them to level 90, but usually it's fine unless you're having troubles in the Abyss. And usually you just don't want to level up the basic attack talent, since unless you're basic attacking with them, you don't want to be leveling it up at all. You just want to focus on their skill and their burst. And in general, like the final do is just have fun with the game. You don't need to play this game however like is, I guess, like academy level Genshin. You can play this game however you want, even if like people make fun of you for like playing like main DPS Barbara. If you have fun with the game, you have fun with the game. That's all that matters. And if people try to make you not have fun with the game, just ignore them. But yeah, that's all I have for today. If you liked my points, like and comment any points you have on your own. I tried to be louder this time, since the other videos I'm kind of quiet. But yeah, that's mostly it. Good night or good morning, or whatever the fuck time it is. I hope you have a good night, since I'm recording at night and I'm about to go to sleep. Bye. Bye.